because the power of God is in His gospel. TvGrace International presents The Mind of Christ, the ineffable words of God on the lips of the man Christ Jesus. Abba, Father.
It says, do not be unequally yoked. We there? 6:14? Really? Second letter to the Corinthians. Or are you in the first one? The second one, it says, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Hey, why shouldn't one associate with an unbeliever? Who does God save? To the believers. Who does God save? So a believer with an unbeliever, then it doesn't match, does it? Then it says, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness? And what accord has Christ with Belial? Or what part has a believer with an unbeliever? And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? Who is the temple of God? We are the temple of God. And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, and I'll receive you. I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. Therefore, having these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Because God deals with position. If you are a believer in God, God expects you to act justly, because sometimes believers act unjustly, but they are still believers, and their situation is different because God has already placed His Spirit within them. And once inside, always in. If you plant poorly, you harvest poorly. If you misbehave, you will reap poorly. But it's one thing to be a believer and quite another to be a non-believer. And to the one who hasn't received the grace is an unbeliever. My family is Protestant. They attend church. And in this case, they are unbelievers because they do not believe the gospel. I was a Baptist and I was an unbeliever. And I was Catholic and an unbeliever. Now there are unbelievers by seed and there are unbelievers because grace hasn't reached them. The news is that there are two types of unbelievers. There is the son of perdition who no matter how hard you try will not be saved because he is called the son of what? But Paul also speaks of another type of unbeliever. He is talking about, for example, Peter was an unbeliever. The apostles were unbelievers because they did not believe in Paul. I mean, if you read Galatians, you can see that Paul said, when Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him face to face because he was to be condemned. He had not believed. And they were Christians, Judaizing Christians, non-believers of the covenant of grace. The pastors of Miami are skeptics to me because they have not believed the message of grace. To Paul, they are unbelievers. Do you know why? Because Paul says that the devil was destroyed, but they say he's alive. How unbelieving they are. Paul says that you are born already saved. And they say you can lose your salvation. Paul says no, that's not even a possibility here. How could you lose your salvation if you're born already saved? We are going to talk about marriage, an unequal yoke in marriage, how it affects when a believer in grace is married. A woman to a man who doesn't believe, or a man to a woman who doesn't believe, about how that unequal yoke affects things. What I will talk about now, it will resonate all over the entire world through the cameras, because this had never been said in 2,000 years. This had not been explained. And a lot of information is needed to provide solace to many who are in pain. Look, 3 things I want to show you. When you are united to a person who does not believe the gospel, you're affected by 3 things: the personal, familiar, and the spiritual. 3 things are affected. The personal, in what way? Well, imagine that. When you come to know this grace, and you start to declare yourself blessed, and you start to say the devil was destroyed, Christ took away sin, I am predestined. There you will have problems with your family. I have problems with my brother, my sister, the other one, that one. They think that I am insane. You don't see that they eat devil in the morning, devil at noon. They partake in the Holy Communion. I wouldn't dare to engage in such a practice. They believe in water baptism, that it saves or helps in some way. Well, I don't believe anything like that. So I am talking about the first aspect. For those taking notes, look. First is the personal, then the family, and then the spiritual. When there is an unequal yoke, say unequal yoke. That's the subject for tonight. So Paul is clarifying that the Lord called us to peace. The key point is to maintain peace. And if both agree and get along, do not part ways. The Lord desires for you to stay together. Why get a divorce? It's too much suffering. Those who have gone through this experience here, who have had more than one marriage, you know how much that hurts. The eye of the storm is right above you and it won't leave. But if you can work together, stay together. Now if you separate, then there are some tips, says the apostle. Verse 16 says, "For how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband? Save him from what exactly? Tell me one thing, can a woman save someone? It is Christ who saves you." Here he is referring to the second aspect of salvation. Thus, in simpler terms, a woman can be in a relationship with a man because the problem lies in the personal. There are issues. I know some sisters who tell me, "Oh, my apostle, I have to tithe in secret. Can't you see that he isn't a believer and he works?" So she comes to the ministry and has to give in secret, or else he will say, "All of my effort for the apostle to dress like this." He thinks that. He doesn't consider the expenses for the electricity, the upkeep of the building, this particular item or that other thing. His focus is solely on observing the ring worn by the apostle. Look, someone told me so. Even more, a woman told me here, I brought my husband for the first time, and when he saw it, he said, "I don't have a suit like the apostle." Being married to someone who doesn't believe is an issue. Personally speaking, I'm talking about personal matters. Now we're moving on to family matters, which is a whole different story. And spiritually speaking, it's quite a story. That's a Calvary. That's repeating the Calvary. Verse 29 says, "But this I say, brethren, the time is short, so that from now on even those who have wives should be as though they had none." Listen, but don't use this to take your wife's measurements, to mistreat her or something like that. You know, what you are trying to say is to attend to your Lord. Also to yourself and your wife. Try to attend to everything as best you can. It says in the 30th verse, "Those who weep as though they did not weep. Those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice. Those who buy as though they did not possess. And those who use this world as not misusing it. For the form of this world is passing away. But I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife." Hey, be careful, it says how he pleases his wife. Because he is speaking here ministerially, speaking ministerially as well. He is speaking ministerially. So, a minister, Paul says, it's better not to get married. Nonetheless, he also advises that the minister should have one wife, that he doesn't have two, but that he has one. That doesn't have two at the same time, but has one. Because some ministers have remarried more than twice. However, he should only have one wife. It says, but I want you, verse 32, but I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman cares about the things of the Lord, that she may be holy, both in body and in spirit. But she who is married cares about the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I say for your own profit, not that I may put a leash on you, but for what is proper, and that you may serve the Lord without distraction. But if any man thinks he is behaving improperly toward his virgin, if she is past the flower of youth, and thus it must be, let him do what he wishes. He does not sin, let them marry. Nevertheless, he who stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but has power over his own will, and has so determined in his heart that he will keep his virgin, does well. However, she must give her consent, because it depends on customs. In the past, it was mandatory. Parents made the decision, customs change. So then he who gives her in marriage does well, but he who does not give her in marriage does better. A wife is bound by law as long as her husband lives. But if her husband dies, she is at liberty to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she remains as she is, according to my judgment. And I think I also have the Spirit of God. Well, I was mentioning that there are three things, for instance. It's particularly delicate for those called to the ministry. Once Mary came with the disciples, and Jesus in the days of his flesh was ministering. And then Mary. And so he said to the disciples, go and tell him that his mom is here. But it would have been better if that hadn't happened. I mean, it seems like Jesus would have said, look, mommy, when we are at home and we have coffee, you are the boss. But right here, do you know what the Lord instructed his disciples to relay to her? Please tell my mother that my mom and my dad are the ones who speak the Lord's word and fulfill it. As they say, Maria, mind your own business, don't get involved in this. You are my mother, but now I am involved in my Father's affairs. Isn't that so? Still, this is a very demanding ministry. For example, when you have the knowledge of grace, if the two of them don't see eye to eye, it's a huge problem. Yes? Of course, those of you listening should be careful not to think, oh, well, I have problems, so this is the way to go. No! Because Paul tells you that who knows if you will save your wife or save your husband. You must wait a considerable amount of time to ascertain that. It is not something you can undertake casually, but you will have difficulty. That's on a personal level, on a family level. Look, sometimes within a family, a marriage where one is a believer and the other is not, or vice versa. If she is the believer and he is not, there's no issue when there's a little get-together. No problem. No problem. There's no problem when you buy a nice house. Oh no, there's no problem. Look, we bought a nice car. There's no problem there. And both the unbeliever and the believer are in on it. The problem is when, what are you hearing? Listening to the Apostles' cassette. That man again? That's what I've been told, brother. That's me. I've been through it myself. I have lived it. Look. Women who have believing women and also men who need to purchase some headphones, insert the cassette and listen to it through the headphones because their husband cannot tolerate my voice or the voice of one of our pastors. Within the family, When it comes to fixing plants and other things, there is no problem. There is no problem. But when it concerns matters of revelation, that's when there's a problem. And you endure them. You are destined to endure it, and perhaps you will save that person and that person. A person once told me, I have witnessed my husband look with the church, synagogue, but she called it church. And I told him, well, mine is to lift the veil from you. My job is to save believers. Now we are going to activate angels to touch your husband. And she said to me, don't you have something you can give me that might be useful to him so I can pass it on to him? So I said to her, well, so take as many cassettes as you can. Here, take this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And if you can, rip off the label because they're growing on me so fast. Or Jose Luis de Jesus. That's where it begins, because I am a stumbling block in that regard. And so thank God that she came, and I told her, use technique. For example, tell him, look, what do you think of what he's saying? He'll tell you. Well, what I advise women and men is that when their spouse is in a situation like this, when they're not a believer, they should say to them, hey, Hippo, help me figure out if this is true or false. Don't do it with bad procedure, but rather seek the technique. Look, help me. I don't want to be deceived. Do you understand? Because Paul was shrewd. Sometimes when he was with those who followed the law, he pretended to follow the law himself in order to win them over. Paul was cunning, and you have to be cunning too. Look, sometimes I meet people and ask them questions. What's more, I sometimes tell them, I'm from a ministry that thinks this way, and they don't realize that I'm the one from the ministry. Even they walk with the ministry alongside them seated. But I ask questions so people will answer me, and then I figure out how to do it. Well, she went over on the first night and said to him, hey, listen to that, because that has me confused. And he started listening, and she was over there saying, angels, please, you must touch it, you must touch it. And at that moment, the husband comes out. Wow, this tape is incredible. And she asks, did you like it? And he says, oh, if that's what I was looking for a long time. And they didn't sleep all night listening. Look, well, I have another, and I have another, and I have another cassette. Great, you saw? It landed well. But if not, is a problem. Because these things cause trouble. So spiritually, I spoke of personal and family matter. You expect in the family. Hey, it's great when they call your kids, isn't it? And they ask, is your dad here? Yes, who am I speaking with so-and-so? Blessed. Your son is answering, blessed, or your daughter, how are you? Reigning in life. I'm telling you because I sometimes call countries looking for the pastors, and the children answer me. And by the children, one knows if the family is being educated with grace, because those children tell me, apostle, reigning in life. Praise God, here I am calling things as they aren't. Firm by grace. But when they respond, who is it that they want? Can I talk to your dad? Wait. Therefore, you see, this is the reason why this gospel is known as a gospel of proceeding. When someone calls, your children are expected to then answer well according to the pact that they are up to date. One expects that all believe. And that is precisely why you share this particular word with the young children, because this is a lifestyle. This is not a religion. You have to save them from when they are little. Look, there are angels with you. And both must cooperate with that, because if the husband isn't there, then the wife is. The one who takes them to school and tells them, angels be with you. Because you have to teach them. Because if not, you're in inequality. And the inequality, it brings problems, and the Lord called us to peace. So, she loves to gather, or he loves to gather, and he doesn't. On Sunday, he or she wants to be present here, listening to the conference. He wants to wash the car, or she wants to do the dishes or something else. He doesn't make time for the spiritual. What are you doing here tonight? Why are you here? You are what? Believer. And you took the time to get yourself ready. You could be resting, particularly if you had a very demanding day at work. But you made the time because you are a believer. But if you were to have a husband or wife who didn't like this, do you think he would come here? To do what? If he is an unbeliever, there is no fellowship between light and darkness. He doesn't care. He lives for his belly, for his flesh. What interests him is the tangible. Here, what matters is cash. Remember that ad? Listen, look, the next convention is in Brazil. We're going to save for the holidays and we're going there. To Brazil? What for? Because the ministry will be there. Oh no, better not. How are you going to make me save money to take a vacation with the ministry? It's better if we go to the beach. Let's go to South Beach. Why go to that ministry convention? I'm telling you this because I've seen it. I've seen marriages. Their sole focus is on the upcoming convention, treating it more like a getaway than a ministry event. Afterwards, they turn it into a vacation destination. That's why we prefer to keep it uncomplicated by offering just 2 or 3 days of preaching during the event. We are doing it freely, and then they are going to see. I don't know what. In Costa Rica, you can see the volcanoes, and in another place, in Guatemala. In Guatemala, you can see the old city of Guatemala and like that for the day, right? And in the afternoon or depending on the day. And then we enjoy. A convention isn't about being stuck there with the Bible all the time. No, we enjoy it. It becomes something pleasant. But that happens if they believe. If they are not believers, they won't be interested because they are in an unequal yoke. And then another thing is, when you say, hey, and why all the fuss about the apostle? It's not that he's the other one, the other one? Because he is the archangel, the last. Be careful with that. They are idolizing. No, he is our father. Father? Father was such. No, look, I'm telling you biblically. No. So, that is truly a problem. I have received an email that came from Colombia that her husband grabbed her by the neck and told her, get Jose Luis out of here. And she replied, but don't you understand that he's the one who fathered me? Let's go look now. As we've been talking about marriage, unequal yokes, there are many questions. Hebrews chapter 13. Verse 4. It is honorable among all. What is it? Notice that Paul says, look, it's better to stay like me. Don't get married. The single and the widower stay that way. But then now he says it's an honor. Why? Because he is talking about 2 different cases. You know, a community is composed of marriage. And if there are no marriages, it falls apart. Well, there's chaos in the world. That's why when I marry a couple, the first thing I do is congratulate them because they are entering into a spiritual commandment where it is honorable to marry, especially when 2 people live together. And after several years, they decide to get married. Instead of scolding them and saying things, well, it's good that they decided to get married to unite more, right? Well, who was it that called me yesterday to tell me, Apostle, it's just that a priest doesn't want to marry me? A colleague from the ministry here told me, Apostle, can I marry them because the priest doesn't want to? Well, surely if he is entering into honor, may marriage be honorable. However, the priests think that because it's a second marriage, they are supporting adultery. But the thing is, you are unable to do that because you must pay attention. He says that marriage is honorable among all. However, we shall continue to read. It says, in the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Who is it that will judge fornicators and adulterers? This implies God must pass judgment on Moses' act of adultery because Moses married the daughter of, what was his name? Jethro, who is from Jethro, and then he appears in the ministry marrying a woman from Cush. And how to explain that? Who judges that? You will judge it? Don't get into that. Do you know why? Because God has to justify Moses for why that happened. Now, judging is not a whip, because when you hear the word judge, you say, look, they put him in jail. No, judging is dividing. When you judge something, you judge it to divide. That's why sometimes a judge, when they catch a murderer, the judge hears the story because they are going to judge. So, and why did you kill him? Well, Your Honor, it was because I came home from work and suddenly they were assaulting my daughter. And then, acting on that father-daughter instinct, I noticed a vase that was there. And I struck it. The man hit himself with the edge of the stairs and died. And for now, the judge says, let's give him 6 months of probation. And then another killer arrives and declares we should sentence him to 100 years of imprisonment because the situations are different. So in the case of Moses, who is the lawgiver, imagine Moses was the one who said, you shall not commit adultery. And he is the first adulterer. Why? Because there are things you don't understand. Moses married Jethro's daughter, and it appears she was a non-believer. Jethro was a great help to him in several ways, and they spent many years together. But it seems that one day Moses called his wife and told her, hey, Jehovah appeared to me here in this bush. And in a fiery apparition, he instructed me to go and rescue the people of Israel in Egypt. And it seems she noticed the bush. Hey, but this doesn't smell or look burned. He told him, believe me, he spoke to me, I saw fire. There is an unequal yoke there. So Moses seems to be marrying again. What a bad example. Do you know what it is for a leader to represent such a great ministry as the people of Israel? And he says, because even if it were in grace, it would be more passable, but in the law. So here God is shown judging. He says, but as for adulterers, don't get involved there yourselves. Let me handle that myself. Behold, David, a man after God's own heart. And he commits adultery, and God gives him a son, who was Solomon, the wisest man on earth. So incredible. David's an adulterer, and who will judge the adulterers? Are you judging it? Look, who will judge the adulterers? I left this message to the nations. And you don't defend me. I don't need defending. Allow God to do His work. Because look, he who couldn't stand what happened to me shouldn't be in this ministry. He doesn't deserve to be here. He's constantly judging me, always judging me. But we receive in the Lord that all people are understood. Because we are mature people. Now, the unequal yoke is a problem. Number one, personally, in the family and spiritually. And to peace we were called by the Lord. I want peace. I want to live in peace. I want to confess the word. I want to get home and talk about what happened over there. That I want, hey, that if they call, look, that one, the other, may those beside me not be offended. What's the idea? They should be happy, right? Blessed with every blessing. I love you all.